My name is Dr. Ron Cross, and this is Boomer Life Lessons and Stories. We're getting ready to start the third episode on future-proofing your career. The third episode is about closing the achievement gap. And what that means is one of the things that people miss when they talk about future-proofing their career is how they deal with other people. So that's going to be part of this discussion as we go through these 7 points that I'd like to make in closing the achievement gap. But before we do that, if you could do me a favor, please like, share, and subscribe and let others know about my channel. That would help me immensely as we do battle with this YouTube algorithm. All right, I'm going to share my screen as I have in the previous episodes. I've developed PowerPoint. So let's go ahead and get to that. So hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing, Closing the Achievement Gap, Future-Proofing Your Career, Part 3. Now, let's go ahead and get started. If I can get it to change for me. There we go. So here's a little bit of a kind of a symbology that really carries the message in terms of what we're trying to do. Where you are, that's here and now in the present. And then where you want to be, that's that green state, somewhere out in the future. And in between is the achievement gap. Now, how do you get from where you are today and where you want to be in the future? Well, you simply get there by following these steps that I'm going to give you and focusing your energy and your attention on doing all the necessary and sufficient things that are required of you in order to close that achievement gap. And if you do these things, as well as the things that I have spoken about in Part 1 and Part 2, then I think you will have future-proofed your career. So let's go ahead and get started with this. And the first point as it comes in, if I can get it to fly in, there it is. Be open to the possibilities and value what others have to say. Now this is about people. This is about you building relationships. So future-proofing your career is about building the relationships that you need that will help you achieve that future state where you want to be and make you resilient to this pace of change, this constant change that is always impinging upon us and our skill set and our careers and jobs, okay? So when we talk to other people, we do so in a manner that is very respectful and with dignity. And we provide that to them and show them that we value what they have to say, even though it may be 180 degrees opposite to what we think or we would like to do. We want to listen. Now, there's something that you need to do when you engage with others, and we do so very little of it as a culture. And perhaps it's an American type cultural thing that is negative, I believe, in its aspects. We do not embrace this idea of active listening. Now, what is active listening? Well, active listening is intently focusing on what the other person that's speaking to you has to say and interjecting from time to time to clarify what it is the other person has said. Somebody may be talking to you and then you say, well, let me see if I understand what you're trying to tell me. Here's what I think I heard you say. Now, you see, if you approach them in that manner, that's going to open up and enhance that communication channel. And the other's going to be more receptive to getting more engaged with you and giving you more of their time because they want to convey to you clearly, precisely, and concisely their thoughts. Now, it might change what you're going to do in that next step or in the future, and it might not. But one thing it will do is it will do actually two things. It will help you build that relationship with that person, and it will give you something to think about, make you more aware of different perspectives. So be open to the possibilities and value what others have to say. Do not, we've all been there, do not fall prey to the not invented here syndrome. And what that is saying is simply, I don't value anything anybody else has to say because it's not coming from me. Well, that is a recipe for failure because you don't achieve things in this life and you do not future-proof your career by ignoring what others have to contribute or what others have to say. You see, people want to engage with other people that are positive in their approach to working with others, right? That are positive in meeting the challenge. I'll just play this game with you. I want you to open up your minds and think about a person in your past that was always doom and gloom. Now think about that for a couple of seconds. Have you identified them? I don't want to know who they are, so don't say it out loud. But now I want to know what you think about them in terms of your desire to work with them and be around them. So go ahead and do that. Okay, now since we are communicating in a unidirectional fashion, because I'm on this side of the camera and you're on the other side, let me tell you my thoughts. When I see these individuals, and I've engaged with them in the past, it really tells me that, gosh, they add negative value. I don't think I want to engage with them anymore because they kind of disrupt the rhythm of my work or my progress. They disrupt and impinge upon my positive outlook. They actually cultivate this idea of pessimism. And you can't achieve anything by being pessimistic. You have to be optimistic in your outlook, but also be aware of the risk. And we're going to talk about the risk in another bullet. So you see, when you're open to the possibilities and you're building the relationships with others and you're open to what they have to say, even though you might not do exactly what they have to say, it's going to make you more aware going forward. And it will give you a valid and valued ally, so that when you encounter those problems that you can't handle yourself, you can reach out to them and use up one of your 3 calls, right? What is that called? A life-saving call? I'm in a problem area. I don't know where to go, how to do it, how to approach it, but I know somebody that's been there and done that. I'm going to call them. Now, the only reason why I said it was 3 calls, there was a game show on television sometime in the past where the individuals got these 3 life calls, right? Well, in truth, you're not limited to 3. You build that network. And actually, don't look at it as a network. Look at your relation building as a fabric of connections, a fabric of help. And you're engaged helping others as much as they are engaged in helping you. But if you develop this fabric of support, then there's not one challenge that you can't build a team to achieve. There's not one problem that you can't make a phone call to someone that will be able to help you, right? So if you build the relationships, you're going to begin to future-proof your career and not have to worry about being laid off or let go for whatever reason, because they're going to value you as an individual, as a team member. And if you lose that thought, all the rest that I have to say is going to go out the window. You have to be able to relate to other people and respect what they bring to the party, so to speak. Okay, number 2. Now we have to also be able to use the filters. Now, what's a filter? A filter takes an entire volume and filters out the unnecessary things and only lets pass through the things that are relevant and pertinent to what it is that we have to do, whether it's right here and now or as part of our future plan. So we have to activate our filters and avoid the noise of unrelated side channels. And you see this happen quite often. People have work to do on the job, but there's side channels of noise coming in that literally distract them from the job at hand. And they're over here looking and relating to this person over here about something that has nothing to do with the job. They're talking about other people, they're talking about other events, things of that nature that are irrelevant. This noise and side chatter takes you away and detracts from your attention and your focus on the job. Now, I'm not saying don't enjoy your work environment and get to know the people. There's a time and place for that. But I have seen people who spend most of their time during the day chattering with other people and creating noise and inhibiting the work of the team, and puts the team at a disadvantage and gets them behind. And eventually that sort of thing catches up. And when the company gets in a downturn, they let them go. Or the company sanctions them in some way because they're distracting the team and the team is not able to achieve. Remember, there are some companies out there that let the team manage the job. And that means that the team can fire people from the team, right? They can fire members from the team. The team is more valuable without them than with them. The program's more valuable without them than with them. The program is more able and capable without them than with them. So you put these filters up and you get rid of all that side chatter and you understand what is pertinent and appropriate for the job, and you focus your energies and your efficiencies on moving the project forward. And if you're always doing that by still building relationships as appropriate and where appropriate, then you're going to be future-proofing your career. Again, this idea that part of future-proofing your career is not necessarily about technology. It's about relating and engaging with other people. Okay, so that was number 2. Number 3, work to mitigate and or eliminate risk. That's the known, the unknown but knowable, and the unknown and unknowable. Now, this is rich, and there's a lot of points to talk about here. First, let's talk about a risk. A risk is anything that will negatively impact your baseline, any one of your 3 baselines. Now, on a project, you have 3 baselines. You have your cost baseline, which is your budget. You have your schedule baseline, which is when things need to get done and when your deliveries and interim deliveries need to be made. And then you have your technical baseline, or your requirements, what it is that you need to do. What functionality or capability do you need to develop as part of that product or service? So if a risk impacts any of those 3 baselines negatively, then you need to mitigate it. Now, how do you mitigate a risk? Well, risks are things that could happen. They're not the present. They are not the reality of the present. They're things that could happen if you don't take steps to eliminate or mitigate. Mitigate means lessen, right? Lessen the impact. Now, how do risks manifest themselves? Well, there's a probability of occurrence. And then should they actually occur, there is an impact in dollars. I mean, that's the way we kind of quantify it. So let's say that there's a $100,000 risk that if it happens, it's going to negatively impact my project and cost the project $100,000. But the probability of it occurring is only 25%. Well, the risk exposure to the project is 25% of $100,000 or $25,000. So now, how do you mitigate it? You either mitigate it by reducing the probability of it occurring, or you mitigate it by reducing the impact should it actually occur in terms of dollars. So your desire is to mitigate. The ultimate desire is to eliminate and prevent it from happening at all. So there's 3 types of risks that come about. And if you think about these, it's the unknown but knowable risk that really get us. The unknown and unknowable risk are things that we just have to prepare for in very general ways. So let's talk about the 3 types of risk. The known risk is something that you already are aware of. It's out in the future. If I do A, B, and C in my plan, there's a possibility that this might happen. Now, what do I need to do to mitigate that? Well, I put steps in my plan to mitigate the cost of the impact should it happen, or the probability of it occurring. So those mitigation steps are ingrained and integrated into your schedule or your execution plan. So that's with the known. And by the way, the mitigation steps are going to cost the program something. So the cost of mitigating, reducing the impact of a risk or the probability of it occurring, is going to be less than should you ignore the risk and it come full bore onto the program and its full manifestation. That cost of dealing with it at that point, that future state, and you're there now at that future state, is going to be a negative value to the project, and it could disrupt the rhythm of the project and prevent you from making your deliveries or impacting your ability to deliver the product or service as it needs to be delivered. Now, what is the unknown but knowable? Well, when you stand up your execution plan for your project or your career, because when I say project, it could be you managing your career. You don't know about these risks, but if you apply yourself and actively engage and consistently scan the horizon, looking for those things that could negatively impact your plan, then you begin to become aware of those threats that are out there. And remember, threats that add negative value are risk, right? So they're unknown initially, but as you begin to execute to your plan, things begin to happen, and you're scanning that horizon, looking at typically programs manage by looking at the week's plan of activities and what's going on and what needs to be done to make them happen. And then they have the 30, 60, 90-day plan. So what they're doing is they're looking at the next 30 days, what needs to be done, what could go wrong with those plans to achieve what needs to be done in those 30 days, and what do they need to do about it. And sometimes there's just issues, right? We didn't get exactly the material that we needed, not enough. So you go and put a step in to execute procurement, a rapid deployment of procurement, bring those additional materials in. They're not a risk until you see that perhaps your provider has gone out of business, right? Then that risk has become a reality. But this is what you need to do. You need to be scanning, looking at these risks as you begin to execute these threats, and you identify them as risk, and then you update your plan to include mitigation steps to thwart those risks, to prevent them from becoming reality, or if they do, you've mitigated their impact from a dollar standpoint. Okay. Now, again, I say dollar standpoint because programs kind of quantize risk in terms of dollars, but risk could impact your schedule, which eventually is dollars. They could impact your material, which eventually is dollars. They could impact your meeting your requirements, again, which eventually is dollars, and so forth. So a common means of measuring risk is the dollarized impact of it. So by scanning the horizon, you're looking for those unknown but knowable risks. And when you see them, when you identify them, you develop mitigation steps and put them in your plan of action or your executable plan. All right. And the last one is the unknown and unknowable. Now, typically, the way programs deal with unknown and unknowables, and perhaps you should do this too based on your lessons learned in managing your career, they know that when I was striving to achieve these types of things, some unexpected things out of the blue came and happened and negatively impacted me. And it cost me this in terms of time, effort, and money to overcome them. So programs typically will set aside 5 or 10%, typically it's 10% of the funds that they have for the project. They'll set it aside as management reserve. Well, what you need to do is set aside your management reserve by constantly being reinvented, by getting more education in your skill set, by future-proofing your career, by taking training classes and other areas that are adjacent to what your primary job is. That way, should something happen, like your job be eliminated, you have other skills available that can be reallocated to the adjacent lanes, or maybe a 90-degree phase shift type of career change. And it does happen. In the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of the electro-optic engineers that we had in the company chose to change their profession because the high demand for electro-optic engineers kind of diminished as the development was achieved of the products, and they became redundant. So they were changing careers, getting different positions in the company, and even changing jobs. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. If you want to future-proof your career to make sure that you're always employable, you have to develop these side skill sets that may not come into play. And you have to be able to deal with the unknown and unknowable risks that might come your way by doing this. Okay? So that is work to mitigate and or eliminate risk. Number 4, you create and execute to the plan. And I've been saying that throughout these part 1, part 2, and part 3. You have to develop a plan. You visualize a goal. You create a plan to achieve the goal. Then you order your steps in executing to the plan, making adjustments and modifying the plan as you need to thwart the threats and the risks that are out there, or as your customer needs change, right? And your customer needs might be your family if we're talking about you and your career, right? Okay. Now, number 5, always act to be the closer by knowing what is required and what is next. It's kind of interesting. We found, or I found in my career, that as we were pursuing opportunities, there were some people that were very good at identifying what it was the customer wanted, formulating a bid for it that would cover all the costs and all the activity, and identify all the resources that would be needed if we won that project. And then we would throw the bid over to the customer, would win the contract. But those guys that were able to do that, to kind of reel in that opportunity into the company, they weren't very good executors in terms of executing to the plan. There were people that were really good people to execute to the plan and get us through integration and test, or partway through integration and test, but there always seemed to be problems that would erupt in these projects that these early project people couldn't deal with. And so we would call in the closers. Now, the closers were the people that specialized in driving a project to close out and meet the needs and the requirements of the project. Kind of interesting, isn't it? They were just, I don't know, intellectually inclined in that area. They would identify easily what needed to be done where others could not, and then they would order the resources that they would need to execute to their plan, their need plan, and then drive through and close out the program, make the delivery, fill the devices, train the customers, and then help maintain it. These guys were the closers. So one of the things that the company valued was the closer. And the reason why they did is the company doesn't get paid until you make delivery. So these individuals were highly valued in what they did for the company that enabled the company to be paid, enabled the company to avoid late delivery penalties, right? So one of the ways to future-proof your career is to be able to close on an activity, to be able to drive to closure to a plan. If you're able to do that, the company's going to highly value you. Now, how do you do that? Well, you become a great problem solver. You're able to evaluate what it is, what is the problem, what's the root cause of the problem, what do we need to do to fix the root cause, who's going to be needed to work with me to drive it to closure and to close out that project, that program, or in your personal career to drive it to closure to get that degree or that advanced training, right? So you have to be able to not only create and execute to the plan, but you have to be able to close to the plan, close and execute and deliver. That's highly valued by companies. So if you want to future-proof your career and ensure that you have employment going forward with advancement that will allow you to be all that you can be part of the solution to the problems, be the closure, and you will have great success. Number 6, when you achieve, because you're not going to be doing it by yourself, give credit where credit's due. And I've said this in the past. If you take all the credit, you're going to be adding negative value because you're going to create disillusion, you're going to alienate people, and people's not going to want to work for you. And again, future-proofing your career is about empowering and working with people and enabling and developing those relationships so that you can make a call of help, right? But if you say, I did this where the team actually did this, or if you say, the team was able to achieve only because when you begin to speak in that first person, that's the first red flag. I is going to get you in great trouble with your team and spread discontent. So always give credit to others when they provide and help in closing and making that delivery. In your career, if you want to future-proof your career, give credit to others where credit is due. You cannot future-proof your career without dealing with the human element. Now, that is a very important statement. You cannot future-proof your career without dealing with the human element, dealing with others in a positive fashion. Okay, number 7, and we're about done here. Be success-minded in all that you do. Be success-minded in all that you think, say, and do. And here's the catch line. Failure is not an option. Now, you may fail to achieve a goal, but that's okay because you're going to gather in all the value you received in striving toward that goal. But when you're working for companies and you're working in a team, the team has a job to do. And they have to strive to close off on that job so that they can go to the next job or the next challenge. And the more jobs you can complete, the more challenges you can overcome, the more problems you can solve, the more valuable you're going to become to the company. And therefore, you're going to future-proof your career and always be in demand by the company. And what does that mean? I had an organization that I managed of over 600 people at its peak. And there were a few names, top 5% of those people. Every program in the company was asking for those same names. Why? They wanted the A team to work on their project. So your goal is to work and strive and be success-minded and achieve so your name is synonymous with the A team. Now, you don't accomplish that by going home every day at 4:30 if that's when quitting time comes, because other people may be struggling on the project, or you may be putting off till tomorrow what should be done today. You're not going to be adding significant value. You have to add significant value to be identified as part of the A team. And if every program manager is asking for you by name, not by as a general, this is the type of person, but I want Ron Cross, or I want Vijay Kumar, or I want, you go name that name, then you're part of the A team. And you're going to be deemed critical going forward to the company's success. And when you equate your name to the success of the company, or when someone equates your name to the success of the team, to the success of the project, to the success of the company, then you're future-proofing your career. You don't get there by just working 8 hours a day and going home when other people on the team or the project still have problems. You're doing everything that you can to always be adding value and achieving the little successes, the interim successes, and the great successes. Because here's the thing, how do program managers get to know you? They get to know you by your track record. And what delivers your track record? Your reputation. So if you have a reputation for getting things done in the most difficult environment and you're open to accepting challenges, those program managers and vice presidents and directors, etc., are going to be asking for you by name. And that means you future-proofed your career. Now, I have one other bullet here. It's a bonus bullet that I want to share with you. This is always anticipate the unexpected. That means you need to be nimble and flexible, not rigid and very narrow-minded. Those are gumption traps. To be nimble and flexible means you're always staying current with the latest innovations out in the universities, out in industry, and within your own company. You're always striving to understand something more in your lane of activity and in the adjacent lanes. You do that because you have a goal out there at the end of your career, the last 5 or 10 years of your career, where you want to be. And you cannot future-proof your career by ignoring and not staying current. The current developments are going to come at you in a constant fashion because we know one thing. Heraclitus said it, change is constant, and therefore you have to be constantly arriving with new skills, new understanding to be able to handle the unexpected. So if you do that, you're going to be ready for the future when the future becomes the present. And that's really it. And it looks like I've got that bullet behind there. Remember, there is no real problem. There are always simply opportunities. You need to view the problems that come at you not as problems, but as opportunities. And if you do that, you're going to future-proof your career. All right, I'm going to stop my share for my last few words. I hope this has been helpful. Actually, I hope part 1, 2, and 3 of future-proofing your career all have been helpful to you and opened your eyes. Again, these are things that I've learned through my career and allowed me to gain success throughout my career and advance and become more than I had expected I could be. If you do these things, you're going to be successful, and you're always going to be in demand. And when you do these things, you will have future-proofed your career. With that, my friends, I want to let you know you're always on my mind. Take care of yourself, and more importantly, by taking care of yourself, you take care of your family, because really, that's what it's all about. All the best. I will see you in the next episode.